The captain has now switched on the fasten seatbelt sign as we make our descent into Derricone Airport. The weather is a warm 80 degrees here in Star State, and on behalf of our staff and pilots, thank you for choosing Owen Air. Did you know that Derek Deke Owen was the first Owen to get his wings? It was at the turn of the last century, when aircraft was just invented, Dan was asking excitedly. Lydia, who had slept for most of the flight, was just waking up. The airport being named after him was a bit of a giveaway, Kim said with some humour. The sight of the sunshine was a welcome change to the rain of the shady city. It was part of the air race, Dan went on. The Owen family sought to get patent for commercial flights. This was an incredibly bold move when you think about it, considering man had only just started to take to the sky, let alone carrying passengers. The Owens were determined to be the first, though. Lydia was stretching, having enjoyed her in-flight nap. Kim was focused on the task at hand. We'll group at the hotel and then we'll set out and find the 3 targets she'd instructed. Dan was still a little giddy. He never thought he would have the opportunity to accompany the agents on an honest-to-God mission. An honest-to-God mission, Sam, he had cheered. I have to admit, I was a little jealous. The way the good gang operated and their dedication to their duty reminded me of the old Detective Roger serials I was obsessed with as a child. Each week I would dutifully tune in to find out how Roger and his heroes were coming along, and what new obstacles the dastardly villains threw in their way. Being on hand and experiencing it all was a real boon to Dan. I waited back home, tuning in to find out what happened next. Trace, collect and return the 3 washed-out frat boys sounded like an easy task for the agents. Little was to be known of the true danger that lay ahead. A nondescript car was provided for them. Travel around the Star State was going to have to be understated. You don't have to worry about a thing, agents, said Dan. I'm going to make your mission as easy for you as possible. You just do what you do best. Dan was aware Kim wasn't so keen on having a civilian tag along, but Elizabeth Beckenridge had insisted. I don't trust those Owens. They're clearly up to something sneaky, and Dan will keep everything documented, she had said. If your own man had been the Cappy's sentiment, I'd rather have the young man appointed to take charge on communication detail. Keeps the information casualties contained. I will not lie to you, agents. I have not the heart to imagine what Buddy has left behind, and the last thing anyone needs is Beckenridge making it a showpiece for her own gains. The Cappy trusted Dan. Despite her own patchy history, he also trusted me to fact-check and fill in the blanks. He was aware that I would not omit any details no matter what, but as he put it, he would much rather deal with writers with integrity than a dragon with a grudge. Dan was determined to earn his place with the team though. He may not have the on-field training, he may not have the experience, but he could make the mission as easy as possible for the agents. It was a long flight, Dan was saying as he took to the driver's seat of their discreet rental. Sit back, relax, and I'll have us at the hotel in no time. Kim was checking her phone for local news that may give clues to the bros' whereabouts. There was an article of some interest. It seemed 3 similarly dressed young men had been spotted rushing down the main boulevard of Owensville Avenue. This would be a slow news day on any other occasion, but when the article mentioned they had tried to purchase over-the-counter pharmaceuticals with fake ID and even faker checks, Kim suspected the bros had been responsible for the chaos that ensued. According to the article, one of the most vocal suspects, who was not a middle-aged Latina as his ID suggested, discrimination, bro! That is not fucking cool! Had been determined his bro was to be given what the report described as anything that will buzz, bang, or make his cock stand on end. It didn't take Detective Rogers to deduce where all that nonsense had come from, but it was offering a clue to Kim exactly what they were up against. Dan, asked Lydia from the back, should we be heading down this way? Don't worry, agents, I've got it taken care of, Dan said confidently. Kim looked up. It seemed driving wasn't an issue, but ploughing into oncoming traffic very much was. Dan! The agent screamed. In his haste to impress, Dan had completely forgotten the traffic flowed on the opposite side in the Star State. With the honking of traffic and screams from all 3, the mistake was corrected. Sorry, Dan, but I did promise I would omit no details. With Kim taking over driving, Dan was demoted to the passenger seat. It was not helping his case that he could be useful to the agents, but there was still a job to do, and now it looked like Rosita Bonita and her 2 chicas were last seen in Owensville Avenue. At the hotel, Kim hauled one of the large luggage cases that had been left for them. She opened it up, and from the adjoining room, Lydia could hear her cry, "Oh, this is fucking ridiculous!" Upon checking the reason for the exclamation, Dan and Lydia found Kim pulling various items from the case. It wasn't the items that were the problem. They were exactly what was to be expected. What Kim was objecting to was the firearms cases marked with property of Inc. Owen, notes in the local currency marked as property of Breckenridge Financial, dragon stamps, dragon stamps, more targets. It would have been easier to just stamp the foreheads of the agents and be done with it, but I digress. Equipped with handguns and more local news articles that had the actions of 3 out-of-control frat boys on a mission written all over them, Kim and Lydia set off to the brothel that they had last seen at to ask some questions. The beauty of the adventure was that it can take you to unexpected places. The beauty of the bros is, for a writer like me, there seems to be no limit to the material they provide. We are familiar with the brothel, so there is no need for me to reiterate what you can expect there. However, what Lydia, Kim and Dan had found upon arrival was distinctly different from our last visit. There was a smouldering pile of clothes burning outside, for instance, which belonged to Buddy Owen. It seemed as he fled the brothel he had taken time to extract what little clothing he had left and burn anything Peaches had touched. "There's piss burn, bro! There's fucking piss burn!" He had thrown down a lighter and seemingly sped off in his birthday suit when it wasn't his birthday. Chad had thrown his jacket on him. This hadn't helped in the slightest. They didn't have much time to worry anyway, because the shotgun blasts on the neighbouring trees quickly followed. "Yeah," Shotgun Sally greeted the agents. She had been completely drained of any welcome a brothel madam would normally provide. Kim provided her credentials. Lydia did likewise. She then displayed a picture of the bros that made Shotgun Sally's fingers twitch for her gun all over again. "Have you seen these 3 men?" Kim asked them. "Yeah, we've seen them," Sally replied. "If we see them again, we're gonna have a problem," she warned. "Do you know where they went?" asked Kim. "They had nowhere to sleep, no money, and left their library tickets behind. My guess would be they didn't get far." Kim took a deep breath. This transatlantic runaround was going to prove more troublesome than she had anticipated. "We're going to need to split up," she said, and that is what they did. If the rumours were true, and the 3 had fled the brothel in the state in which the madam described, they were going to need clothing, so the local thrift store was a good start. A delicate little jingle danced above Lydia's head, as she described it. The store was dusty, and there was a damp smell from a pile of clothing that had been donated but not yet sorted. The man behind the counter was clearly upset about something, so the bros had most definitely been there. His long frame hunched on the stool as he sat upon his counter. "Excuse me," Lydia interrupted his weeping. "I'm looking for 3 men. I wondered if you've seen them." She showed them the photograph, which caused him to sob harder. "Those good-for-nothing heartless bastards! The bastards! Heartless fiends! Bastards!" Yep, the bros had been there. "They told her she was going to make her honest. He told her he never met anyone like her." Here he heaved and sobbed some more. "He told her they would be together forever, and now look at her! Look at her!" He pointed his arm sharply to a goat dressed in a bridal gown. I believe her name was Dottie. Dottie grunted her agreement. She was heartbroken. She was still dressed in the veil she had been left behind in. Why a goat, I hear you ask? It seemed there had been some kind of miscommunication when the bros heard goats were traditionally bought as marriage gifts. Throw in a Tokushima visa and one-way tickets, they thought they had their problems solved. Lydia's lower lip softened. "Aw," she said. Dottie clearly deserved better anyway. Having no money and no car, life was going to be especially difficult for the bros, and they needed to find a way to get them onto their next destination. Cooper's particular skill set meant that they could easily use parts and build themselves a whole new functioning car. This gave Dan and the agents a huge cause for concern. The closest garage was a place named Mickey's. Before I discuss what Dan found there, let me confirm the several ways in which you will find someone who has had a recent encounter with a bro. They will either be a raving lunatic such as Dominic Cole on Halffield Bay, or they will have unleashed firepower upon them, much like Shotgun Sally. Sometimes all they can do is cry. like the thrift store clerk, or alternatively, there was the option which Dan experienced when they found Mickey himself sat in his garage office staring into space as though a recent event had drained him of all emotion. "Have you seen these men?" Dan asked. Mickey nodded slowly. "Yeah, I've seen them," he agreed. "They were looking for some parts to try and make themselves a vehicle. I told them I don't give nothing for free, and that one on the right there," here he indicated Cooper, "he told me he'd fix up my rides, and he did a great job too, and then he told Grandma he'd fix our scooter." "And did he?" Dan asked. "Did he get the parts he needed?" Mickey shook his head slowly. "Grandma dead now." He showed Dan footage then of the three bros standing by an invalid scooter. The scooter looked as shiny as a fresh car from Cooper Garages. She had a shine that would make even Sonny jealous. Then the footage showed Chad leading the old woman to the scooter. He was so gentle, so understanding. Cooper cars now offering complete comfort for their geriatric customers. Chad patted the old woman's hand with affection. He turned to the camera, which I assume Buddy was holding. He gave the thumbs up. It was most definitely Buddy, because the thumbs up that was returned was bandaged from the dalliance with peaches. The old woman was rested nicely on her seat. It was the most comfortable spot she had ever parked her rear. She smiled to Coops to confirm this sentiment. All there was left to do was to take a little test drive. She pushed the button. Wham! The scooter went ploughing into the wall with a speed and force the best race cars would struggle to match. It could have broken records if it weren't so tragic. Dan's jaw dropped when he saw what had transpired. The bros, last seen dashing off with Buddy, finally realising they could have just escaped on the scooter.
"Dude, we can't get free on! It's not down, Chad!"
No matter what was next on the agenda for the bros, they were going to need money from somewhere, so Kim made her way to check out the local savings and loans deposit. A bank, but not quite a bank. There had been a robbery, but it had gotten rather silly. The banker wasn't sure what had come to blows. They weren't minus any funds. They didn't get away with anything really, but as the man turned around to welcome Kim, he had a lasting reminder of his oh-so-silly day. "Oh, for fuck's sake," Kim exclaimed. The banker had a large dildo stuck to his forehead. The security footage showed Buddy into the bank with it slipped up his sleeve. He could be seen arguing with the banker. The banker had raised hands, but when the dildo slipped from his sleeve and he realised it was not a gun, like a flash his hand hit the alarm. Clumsy as anyone would be with a dildo up their sleeve, Buddy still made good use of a natural own marksmanship. He threw the dildo, catching the banker on the forehead and causing him some whiplash. Back at the hotel, Dan and the agents had gathered again to share their intel and move a little further on in their tracing of the bros' steps. The Cappy and I had been given a rundown of their experiences so far, and all the great businessman, CEO Chacon, could do was shake his head. I suppose the actions of a wayward trio didn't want much else. Running his camera, Dan took the opportunity to ask about Joe Hicks, the hero cop from whose ashes the agency had arisen. A man so well respected his very name had given rise to the Good Gang team, the Hicks Agency. "Joe was a real life and soul," Kim said with a fond smile. "He could fit in anywhere, amongst anyone. Swanton hailed him as one of their own, but he was just as comfortable sitting up in the arms up in Bolton. He had a way with people. He was firm, but he was fair. He always gave people a chance. He found himself dealing with some scum over the years, but he never let it sour him. It was him that taught me to keep a level head. Boxing helped me channel my anger, but Joel taught me how to use it to lead through tough situations. I'll always be grateful to him for that." "Sounds like quite a guy," Dan commented, looking down his lens. Kim nodded. "He's a big name to live up to, but I'd like to think you'd be pleased with how far we've come." "Still got a long way to go yet, Joe," Kim said to the heavens with a smile and a raise of her hand. "But we'll get there." Posing the same question to Lydia, her head fell a little toward her shoulder as she thought about it. "I remember when I first met Joe. It was part of my combat classes back at the academy. I was the only female in a class full of men, but Joe was the only one to treat me the same as everyone else. He helped me feel like I belonged. When I took the job at the Knock Knock Club, I was confident because I knew he had my back. I wish I had the chance to meet him, said Dan with sensitivity. Lydia chuckled. I would have loved it in front of your camera. He was a bit of a goof that way. He made lots of home movies. He loved capturing the moments. I think he would be astounded, as we all are, with some of the scenarios we have been presented with so far, but he would be the first to strip it down to its bare bones. It doesn't matter that Chacon is a powerful figure and Buddy has always been one step from disaster. He would say that a father is worried about his son and wants him home. After returning the bros to Colford, then they would have to answer to him. What do you think he would say about the search for the Capasso bros? From my own reflection on Joel Hicks, my mind always takes me back to his arranging my interview with Tabitha of the Knock Knock Club. There was a young woman who had caused unimaginable grief. Joel had been tasked with assisting in bringing her in, which he did. However, he kept an open mind. He told me as he led me to our holding that it would do much more good to understand where people like Tabitha are coming from. He gave her that benefit of the doubt. Some people are born rotten to the core, and a man like Joel Hicks could read that a mile off. Some people were victims of their circumstances, and he realised sometimes circumstances can create monsters. He was a good man, and it only seemed fitting that the good gang would carry on his work. We're still on their track, Kim observed, as they arrived at a local coffee house and could see the homeless man giving a statement to the police. Before they continued, the agents decided to take a moment to try and piece together what a bro would do. Dan stationed himself and began to send the updates to me. Kim and Lydia went inside to order some refreshments. Would it be much easier for them to disappear if they just lay low? Lydia asked the obvious question. Never had they had such a trail of destruction to follow. I think this is them trying to lay low, Kim surmised. Can you imagine if they really wanted to cause a scene? Lydia shook her head. The thought of that was terrifying. Another thought that was terrifying her was that they were going to have to face next. Poor Dottie, she sighed. Kim gave her a questioning glance. Never mind. The parts of those old serial adventures I loved most was the dramatic fashion in which Detective Rogers would meet the latest friend or foe. The charged music, the slow panning from the tip of the boot to the top of the hat. This wasn't one of those occasions, but both Kim and Lydia had the same can't believe my eyes expression on their faces that Rogers had as he sized up the danger. Dale Cooper and Chad Perry had returned to the coffee house. Not only was that monumentally silly move on the part of the bros, but adding to the sheer nonsense of the situation, the two bros seemed to have no idea what they were walking towards, with both agents watching them closely. They had managed to reclaim a phone, so the two bros were in search of the Wi-Fi password. They were driven purely on anticipation of their next fix. The pit stop had supplies. Chad eyed Kim first. He paused for a moment. Then he looked at her shoes, which gave him a wry grin and nod that seemed to be commending her. Cooper turned to Lydia. She smiled at him. He smiled back. She winked, and there was suddenly a spring in his step. Bruh, 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 he whispered to Chad. Play it cool, bro, play it cool, Chad suggested. That was when the two proceeded to raise their shirts to display their behinds and strut towards the entrance in a move they called the cock walk. Lydia and Kim obviously followed, still a little flabbergasted. The two bros assumed their cock walk was attracting the two chicks. Dan, who had seen them arrive, came rushing in. As the bros passed Dan, Chad gave a challenging display to him, which can only be described as a childish taunt that suggested he was some kind of pantomime dame. Lydia and Kim continued to follow. Cooper was particularly pleased to see Lydia tailing. Is that? Dan asked. Yes, it is, Kim agreed. But they realised not a fucking clue. The agents followed the bros to an alleyway close by, where Buddy was in conference with the pit stop crew Cooper had managed to snare. The drug deal was almost complete. Yo, Bud! Bud! We brought pussy, bro! Buddy was excited by this prospect. He gave a jockey's cheer when he saw Lydia. I can only imagine what damage his lifestyle has caused his brain, because he had met Agent Lowe before. I suppose outside the Colford context, to him she was just a pretty girl heading towards where he planned on getting smashed and doing some smashing. She was a major upgrade from Peaches anyway. But then his expression dissolved when he saw Kim. "Oh, Chad, dude, what the fuck?" he poked, his stomach not really getting a break. "What's the deal with the fucking shoes, bro?" Kim Adams' choice of footwear aside, just when Buddy thought he had all made again, and his world came crashing down. "Bernardone," Kim barked. "Oh, fuck." Buddy buttoned up. He had his support with him, though. The Cooper pit crew had the goods, and they had a job to do. They didn't have time for some bitches, and Dan too, apparently, who was shown he was armed by actually holding up his gun. "Think you better step away from the boy there, dyke bitch," warned a particular vocal one named Juarez. Kim was not in the least bit interested. She kept her focus on Buddy. "You're coming with us." Now confident the pit stop crew had them covered, Buddy grinned. "I ain't going nowhere, bitch," he said. "That's right, my boy ain't going nowhere. My boy gotta do what a boy gotta do," Juarez went on. "And you ain't gonna do nothing because I'm judge, jury, executioner, you dumb bitch whore," he yelled as he pulled up his white vest he wore to display the firearm on his belt. "Yeah, dude," Buddy cried. "Shoot her in the face!" Kim glared at him. "You done?" she asked. "Am I done?" Juarez returned. Always the wrong response in such a scenario. Smash! Kim landed him on the ground. "What the fuck?" Buddy exclaimed. "Dude, she just landed that bro on his ass," Chad offered commentary. That was when all hell broke loose. Lydia disarmed the pit stoppers that charged towards her. "That tight little chick can move, bro." "Whoa!" all three cried in synchrony as Kim disabled the pit stoppers who had charged on her. "Why is that dude showing his gun?" they asked of Dan, who was literally waving his firearm. Bang! Smash! "Dude, that chick is fucking them up!" With a deflecting series of moves, Lydia had pushed one of the pit stoppers towards Kim, who gripped him around his waist and, yes, pile-drove him to the floor. "Dude, we better fucking bail." It didn't matter which one of them made the suggestion. All three agreed with zeal. The three dashed off, and the pit stoppers suddenly became the least of the agent's concerns. Every adventure meets its bumps along the way. It is where the real test of our heroes takes place. The agents weren't in pursuit of Buddy and the bros for long. They hadn't ventured too far into the boulevard, and when they were cornered in an alley, by the time Kim, Lydia and Dan found them again, the bros were in the hands of a menacing team who brought a figurative and literal shadow to our tale. The three bros were on their knees. Guns were drawn, and the agents approached with caution. "Those three are coming into our custody," Kim said. Stepping forward, a member of this group raised his chin. He caught Kim in a dark stare. For now, I'll call him X. "These three owe our boss a lot of money." There was a Latin accent in his tone. "These are bad people," Dan muttered under his breath. They were bad people. They owed a lot of money. The great alpha boss X answered to was not one to be trifled with. His reputation would have even the boss lady envious. "Don't give a fuck what your boss wants. They're coming with us." X was out of warnings. He drew the gun and pointed it at Kim's head. Suddenly our heroes found themselves in a deadly position. Ting, 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 ting. The guns of the Shadow Group were shot from their hands. This is where we had the tip of the boot to the top of the hat reveal. That made those old serials so compelling. "Are you clear, Agent?" came a voice that was local. The Shadow Group disbanded quickly, but it would not be the last time the good gang would find themselves face to face. Their saviour was a man who fit well into our thrilling escapades. He wore a cowboy hat and boots. He kept his two pistols poised until they were sure of their safety. "Aim big, aim high," Kim quoted to him. "And I'll never miss his man," replied the cowboy as he tipped his hat. Theodore Teddy Owen was cousin of the Cappy. "Chick asked me kindly if I could come down here and offer y'all some help to bring those boys home," Teddy confirmed. He had been the contact in the States that Kim had been expecting. He was to escort them to the Owen Express train, which would take them to Owen Ranch in the Star State, and where the bros would be thoroughly prepared for their return home. "Buddy," said Teddy, Been a while. But he pouted. Teddy, he said, your cock. Whilst we leave our heroes pondering over the Owen's use of cock as both an insult and praise to the highest honour, we set to catch the Owen Express with Teddy Owen as our guide, and the next stage of the journey awaiting.